The first thing we have to do is define what is Mashpa'ah and what is Makabel. What does it mean? What's a Mashpa'ah, what's a Makabel? Now, the Eibishter created the world in such a way that one of the laws of nature, the real laws of nature, not the science, the real laws of nature, is that everything that is created, every nivra, is Mashpa'ah and Makabel. It's Makabel from what is higher, and it's Mashpa'ah to what is lower. There's no Metzias, there's no nivra that is independent. It's always being Makabel from above and Mashpa'ah below. It's a rule, it's a law of nature. Everything exists this way. Leilamus exists this way. But there are three kinds of influence, three kinds of an effect. One is called Ila v'Olu, or Seder Ishtalshelus. Ila v'Olu means that one, let's say A, affects B because they're closely related. When one thing has an effect on another, you have to ask, what's the relationship? Why should this affect this? Everything has to have an effect on something, but why this has an effect on... Why does Seichel produce midas? What's the relationship? Ila v'Olu means, in Seichel there are midas. And so the Seichel will actually produce the midah and have an effect on it because it's the parent. The Seichel is the parent of the midah, so it's having an effect on the midah. Let's call that an effect up close. The effect comes from their closeness. This is called Memalek Halalmim, or Seder Ishtalshelus, or Ila v'Olu. Seder Ishtalshelus means there are no gaps. In a chain, you can't have a gap, or it falls apart. Every link has to be connected to the previous link and to the link following. If you miss a link, you break the whole sequence. It's ruined. You can't have gaps. So the bottom, the lower level of the higher link is in some way related and similar to the higher level of the lower link. And that's why they link up, because of their closeness. Seichel has an effect on midas because they're not that far apart. So the effect is from the closeness. Fire has an effect on metal when they're close. If you bring the metal close to the fire from a distance, it's not going to have an effect. Seviv kol almin means there are certain things that have an effect, but from a distance. Seviv, above, beyond, but it's seviv, the world. Seviv kol almin. So it's having an effect on the world, but from a distance. How do you have an effect from a distance? If it's far away, it shouldn't have an effect. It doesn't mean having an effect from far away. It means the distance has an effect. Because it's far, that's the effect. It's like you're listening to someone speak, and you don't understand what he's saying. It has an effect. What's the effect? I don't know what you're talking about. What you're saying is far away. It's not registered. I don't know what you're talking about. So are you affected or you're not affected? You're affected by the fact that you can't understand it. So affect from a distance doesn't mean I can reach you even from far away. It means the distance has an effect. Why does a king cause fear on people? Because he's far away. The distance frightens you. It's awesome. Sevev Kol Almin means the Eibishter has an effect on the world by staying far away. And that distance has an effect. What would you think the effect would be? Bittul. It makes you feel small, insignificant. So it piles a bittul. That's why when it says in Chassidus that a certain thing, or whatever, the Gashmi is a Metzius and it's a grubbe thing. But in its Mokke, it becomes bottle more than... What does that mean? If you put it back in its Mokke, Esav is really higher than Yaakov. Why? Because if he went back to his Mokke, he would be very bottle. Yeah, but he's not going back to it. What's the relevance? Not if he goes back to his Mokke. When his Mokke is begilui, it affects him with a greater bittul than if Yaakov's Mokke was revealed to him. Because Yaakov's Mokke is much closer to him. He didn't fall so far. Esav fell very far. If he should recognize or see his Mokke, it would pile a bittul in him. But not if. That's what his Mokke does to him. From a distance. In other words, the Sevev Kol Almim effect on Esav creates a bigger bittul than the Sevev Kol Almim on Yaakov. Because there isn't that great a distance. But generally speaking, every makif affects a bittul. What creates the bittul is the distance, not in spite of the distance. Right? So there's a whole debate, there was anyway, what is gravity? What's gravity? So before Einstein, the science believed gravity means that every body, every planet, has like a magnetic pull, and it pulls things. So even a planet thousands of miles away is pulled by this. Einstein came along and said, I can't get into this. This planet is 1,000 miles away and it's affecting another one. Doesn't make sense. He didn't know exactly why, but intuitively, this effect from a distance seemed like a little bit of a superstition. It's like, it didn't really make sense. So he came up with a whole different explanation of what gravity means. So the Sevev, the Makif, has an effect not despite the distance. The distance has an effect. The more the distance, the greater the effect. The more einarech, the more bittul. That's the second kind of interaction. There's a third kind of interaction, and that is the effect that essence, atzmus, has on things. The effect of atzmus disregards, is independent of closeness or distance, because there's no close and there's no distant. Etzem is everywhere. So there's no such thing as space. There's no such thing as close or distant. So, in the lower level, in Seder Ishtalshalos, the closeness has an effect. In Sevev, the distance causes the effect. How does Atzmus cause the effect? Atzmus has an effect on everything because everything is Atzmus. So it's not really even, I call it an effect. It should be called Achdus. Be'etzem, everything is the same. Everything is one. So when the etzem touches the etzem, it affects it, or it basically merges with it. So if you have etzem and etzem, how many etzems do you have? One. There's only one etzem. So when you bring together the etzem of this and the etzem of that, you have one. So the effect from close causes an increase. Gidl. It grows. It increases the makabel. And in some way it increases the mashpia also, because metalmidai yesa mikulam. So what is the effect? The effect is increase, enlargement. What is the effect of seviv? Decrease, smaller. You feel tiny. You lose your metzias. What is the effect of etzem to etzem? Achdus, oneness, joining. You merge. In a relationship, there's the pnimis, there's the makif, and there's the etzem. Hashpa'ah pnimis is not as powerful as a hashpa'ah makif. And Hashpa'ah makif is nothing compared to Hashpa'ah atzmis. We sometimes get confused with Hashpa'ah pnimis and Hashpa'ah atzmis because they sound alike. But they're at opposite ends of the... Hashpa'ah pnimis is the lowest form of Hashpa'ah, even though it's the most gishmake. Hashpa'ah atzmis is the highest form of Hashpa'ah. So when it says, Al ken yaziv ish as oviv es imei, v'davak be'ishtei v'hayu lebasar echad, which level is that? It's all three. Al ken yaziv, that's pnimis. V'davak be'ishtei, that's makiv. V'hayu lebasar echad, that's atzmus. Only through Hashpa'ah atzmis do you become one. Rashi says, I think, what does it mean, v'hayu lebasar echad? Two people produce one baby. So in the basar of the baby, there's only one. The two have become one. The connection is, when the mother and father become one, there's a Hashpa'ah atzmis. Hashpa'ah atzmis can produce a baby.